playing it up. He's playing it up.
I was wondering if it's just apple juice.
That's what I think. Is it gathering?
Cool. Here to talk a little bit about science hacking and makerspaces and art and science, even though I say just so. Here's my first laboratory outside of the academic world. It was a gallery in somewhat like it's basically a garage, and this is where I was starting, work out how to do grow bacteria in kitchens using media that you find in supermarkets. I've been talking about do-it-yourself biology for a while. Does anyone know what do-it-yourself biology is? One person.
Maybe more of a UK thing. I mean, that US
No, it's a very American thing as well.
Yeah, US thing, I would say.
Do-it-yourself biology. So it's a movement about doing biology outside of academic and industrial labs. I mean, it's around setting up community lab spaces. So there's a number in America, and there's one in London Biohack Space. So it's and now there's a number of accelerator programs around it as well, running between Cork and San Francisco. So one of these groups has managed to raise $2 million to set up this vegan cheese that won't actually involve cows or animal enzymes. They want to make their own artificial milk. So, but I guess DIY Bio is more about, democratizing science and allowing everyone to, learn about culturing bacteria, and so that they get an idea of that, bacteria is everywhere, and it's in a lot of our foods, and it's very beneficial. So, can you be? So here's a list of lots of different fermentation that can and has been done in people's kitchens for the last few thousand years, and now we seem to have said, oh, okay, we'll let the industry do those fermentations for us because we haven't got time to make yogurt or make pickles. I'm down from Newcastle, so in Newcastle we have this thing called the Makerspace, which is actually like a hackerspace for people interested in creative uses of technology. So that might be engineers that want to make 3D printers, or seamstresses that want to make clothing that glows. Here's what it looks like inside. I mean, we're membership funded, so we don't actually ask the government for any money because apparently we can work it out ourselves. We have hacks and activities like I do a bit of brewing there. Yeah. And the rule zero is generally not to be on fire, which is the one I have a hard time with sometimes. We do some outreach, like a robotics day with children that are sort of outside of school, and maker fairs. So I've been attending a lot of these sort of, just general hack days. There's one called MASH in 2008. This is more about software and a little bit about hardware. So at that time, things like these little, computers were coming available. And then we also, when we started our Makerspace, someone said, oh, we've got this MakerBot, this 3D printer in the university, and it's not getting used. Can we maybe use it at your place? And we went, yeah. So now we have there's probably 10 3D printers that have been built in the space. So we have a nice window that has lots of 3D printed things and lots of ducts as well, but that's a different story. So I'm quite interested in this idea of unconventional labs. So at the top, this is a lab in Croatia that we set up on General Tito's boat, the salad, which is now basically just parked. So we're doing kimchi, bit of glowing bacteria from squids. Down here is probably the biggest petri dish in the world, I have to say, because I helped build it. So there we're working with an artist called Anna Dimitriou, who was interested in growing bacterias on clothing so that she could make a dress that has bacterial pigments in it. And then at the same time, someone was interested in seeing if you could use a tattoo machine. It's an artistic project to micro-inject DNA into various things. So part of building a lab is, trying to get the access to the equipment, and we've come across that, a lot of the equipment in labs is actually quite simple and can be replicated or lodged using CD drives and hard drives and things like that. So this was like a workshop in Copenhagen where we helped people make different types of shaking apparatus. And the best one was this one. I don't work out where the laser actually is on this. Okay. Best one was this one. It's sort of this strange thing that spins around and shakes this little Kinder Surprise egg at the end. So a child made that because that's what they wanted to make. We also do stuff around taking, things you find in the laboratory, things you find in the supermarket, like octopuses, and then run a workshop around dissection. And make affairs, do field trips. So been lucky to be in a lab in Kilpisjärvi, which is like really high up. And there we're like catching microorganisms from the water. It's an actual biological research station, but in this between the summer scientists and the winter scientists, there's a little gap, and that's where there's sort of like a more an art and science expedition for about 20 or 30 people. So why hack science? Because it's fun. Because if we don't do it, someone else probably won't. Like lab-based scientists probably don't have a lot of time or energy or space to hack science, or even to communicate a lot of what science they're actually doing. So it's up to people like me, I think, to look at the papers and see if we can translate that into some sort of interesting thing to be done with other people. This I'll do it with others thing. And also there's a growing thing of artists actually wanting to access the current culture, and the current culture is the scientific culture. So, there's artists that are using various biomaterials to make their artworks now, and some of these are quite hard to access if they don't have access to a laboratory. So, as well as building laboratories outside of academia, it's also about supporting artists getting into laboratories, so that there can be this useful conversation happening between the art and sciences. So I think I've covered most of the things that I was going to talk about. Are there any questions? Oh, yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I actually work for an organisation called Trend in Africa, and we're really trying to be innovative about bringing science to Africa, and a lot of that is actually involving various ways of science hacking.
Yeah.
So in terms of getting fruit flies, we set up a fruit stand in the middle of a street in Africa, set out loads of rotting fruit, went back in the morning, collected all the fruit flies. Of course, this is not by European standards the correct way to do it, but it's actually been incredibly beneficial in terms of how to bring science to Africa and make them more recognised. Basically I think this is a really great thing, and I think Europe should really take it on as a challenge. How are you finding that? I mean, because this is the first time I've heard about it.
There's a lot of, so there's this thing called Science Hack Day that's been running around the world, last 3 or 4 years, and I've just been to one in Berlin, and it was really cool. So there was this nuclear physicist, and he wanted to make something that would show radiation disintegrations, and he has this idea that maybe we can use popcorn in a popcorn machine to model this, and so he's there, says that's what I want to do, and he attracts this group of people who work around him, and they come up with some sort of a disintegration detector, which is like a microphone, and some way of counting it, and some way of actually graphing it in live terms on the screen, and it's a really nice way of taking something that's quite hard to talk about, which is sort of this, you can't really tell when one popcorn is going to pop, but you can have a good idea of when most of them will have popped, and making it into something that's fun and smells nice, and
Provides them to the end of it.
there's also this. Earlier this year, there was this Citizen Cyber Science Summit that was just down at UCL. They have a group called Extreme Citizen Science, or XScience, and they're really interested in, giving people in remote communities the tools to answer the questions they want to answer, not just the questions the scientists want to answer. So so there's a lot happening, but it's probably not hugely visible. But there's Zooniverse, and there's a lot of
Z-O-O-N.
and that's sort of a crowdsourcing platform.
So it's just a science platform. So they actually, I think it's the world's largest now. They have a whole series of experiments, and they partner with them with research projects. But they actually, the way they run it is really cool, because they actually create websites and projects that individuals can join and actually help with the research. So there's like a couple of examples. Can I give one or two examples?
There would have been, so they started off with they wanted to get a lot of tens of thousands of galaxies identified as to what they are, so you kind of go through the little training thing. It's like, this is a spherical galaxy and this is a spiral galaxy, and then you kind of get these pages of pictures, and you kind of go, okay, what kind of galaxy is there? And they do this for a few, 1,000 people sign up or something. At the end they sort of they've managed to, by asking the same question of a lot of different people, they kind of work out, okay, this is this, this is this, this is this. But then there's another one that was based around photographs of Africa, of animals, and so what animals in this picture, what are they doing, and it would be very labour intensive for one PhD student to do it, but for a few hundred people, it's just there's, I guess, that idea of cognitive surplus. People, are interested in contributing to something, and especially if they get a little bit of attribution, or
I think in the Galaxy one, I believe some of the users who had participated in counting galaxies,
they get
they had a co-author.
So
They identified a new.
They are generating, legitimate scientific research that gets published in journals and things.
PaleoQuest are doing the same thing. I don't know.
Sorry?
Have you heard of PaleoQuest?
No.
So they've basically been got a whole load of microfossils from riverbeds, and it's the same kind of thing. Where it would take a PhD student, many PhD students, a lot of times to filter through and kind of pull out what is a microfossil from, and what is a new species from all of this sediment, effectively. They package them up into kits, and they send them to schools. They do kits,
actual physical objects.
Yeah, nice. and then you pull out your samples and you send them in, and if some things is a new microfossil or a particularly interesting specimen, then they are quoted on paper. So it's a similar kind of thing.
Cool. That's really cool. We can apply for them at home, right?
Let me find out. I'll ask.
Otherwise,
Just be school kids. Yeah.
No, definitely not. No, I should have brought some.
oh, you got some.
I can get some. If you'd like,
Okay.
you know, if I'll find out how we.
Okay,
She's
so
got
the
a
next
puzzle.
science hack. So the thing that I was looking at was that there hasn't actually been a science hack in London for like 2 years. I'm not sure who organised the last one, but maybe there's scope to, you know, do another one. This is our very, you know.
What's involved in
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
What's involved in doing it?
So, what's involved?
Yeah, do it.
If you go to the Science Hack website, they have like a massive, like, you know, dossier on like what to do and what it is, and you know, even we had like a science hack, but it wasn't an official science hack because it didn't follow all the rules, so we weren't really allowed to sign up.
Would it be possible, probably yes, to do it in a pub, for example, or like an evening call?
Generally, well, it's possible to do some hacking in a pub, but this is generally more like a 48-hour stretch.
Because I think it's a cool thing, and not a lot of people know what it is.
Yeah.
And so
Well, we
at
can
Pint
do
of
it.
Science.
We have been doing it in pubs.
So at Pint of Science, we're looking for that kind of things, you know.
What? Who what?
Pint of Science.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it'd be a cool evening.
Yeah.
Just like
Maybe 2 evenings.
yeah, or two like
Well, yeah.
yeah.
We sort of took over a pub with this group called Hacteria in Prague, and we're sort of turning this into a food exploration thing. There's some spice detectives trying to work out the secret.
Yeah, that would be cool, really.
Pint of Science hack.
So as a scientist, if I want to, you know, come to a science hack or bring something to a science hack, what sorts of things work? What doesn't work? Like,
Well, I guess. I mean, some people came to the science hack with actual, or some people have come to the science hack with a bit of their experimental data.
okay,
So one in Newcastle was as a researcher working with crab neurons, and like, so she's like taken traces of them, and then we tried to make, or we made with the makey a crab that's sort of a crab out of, you know, a model crab that, you know, you could kind of play. So it was kind of like this would, one button would turn on the, you know, this is the crab without a neurostimulator. This is, and so there was some artists there, or musicians that actually sonified it, so it sounds.
Brilliant.
So
Yeah.
Alexis, you actually have a great example of something I think that was a cool science hack. What you guys did for the Craig Lakes, I think totally qualifies. You should
so part of the Science Museum Lates, we designed an event for participants that basically we built these smartphone microscopes from a plan
Yeah.
we found online, which use a laser from a lens from a laser pointer embedded in plexiglass with a platform underneath and then a little torch as a light source. And using the camera on your smartphone, you
What can
can.
you see? Cheek cells.
We actually used the embryos that we work on zebrafish embryos. So we had embryos at different developmental stages, and the people at the Science Lates could come in and actually take their
I think I saw
photos.
pictures of it on Twitter.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I totally understand whether it's more geared towards people kind of sort of coming in to enjoy science that already exists, or whether you get people coming in being like, look, I've got this idea or this theory that I want to test, and you know, I'm not a scientist, but I just want to give it a shot. Like, how often does that happen?
Just trying to think. I mean, the scope of things, you know, there's scope for people to come and say, I'm interested in, you know, exploring this. Like, one of the groups in Berlin was trying to control a robot with brainwaves.
Yeah, I mean, is that kind of like...
So that kind of thing. Or there was another group that wanted to make a pot plant that would follow the sun. so that you could kind of.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, is there any kind of like, there's no standardised place where you might be like, boom, I did this science hack, I think this is new, and you post it up and be like, hello.
I know, and then sort of in biology, there's this do-it-yourself biology email list, which is quite massive. So if you have an idea, you can kind of say, I'm interested in doing this, and then maybe something happens. Like some people are thinking already about genetically engineering.
That's DIY.bio.org, right?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the FBI has a pretty strong presence in.
It's fine. We're used to it. They probably have, they do have a very strong presence.
In monitoring or involvement?
Okay, so first of all,
we're not here to keep an eye on you. We're here to, engage with the community. And,
They had an outreach. They had an outreach for DIY Bio in San Francisco. So they invited about 60 of us from around the world to go there and talk to them.
Are they trying to recruit you to make biological weapons, or are they trying to make sure you're not making biological weapons?
I think they see us as canaries.
Ah.
But, just
There's
this
not
like,
a coal mine?
well, just,
Yeah.
you probably don't want to record it, but just this idea that, people that are generally doing bad stuff are generally fairly credulous. No, they will first talk about what they're doing, and the first point of call is going to be DIY Bio. They're first on their list saying, oh yeah, I've got an interest in some sort of virus and some sort of, race, and it's like, oh, guy. But, we don't want to, harm ourselves, so, and we're biologists, so it's like, yeah.
Interesting times.
But first of all, we started from Wilson Woodrow Center, which is sort of some sort of policy think tank in the US that was interested in getting do-it-yourself biology to code our own behavior, or have a code of conduct, a bit like ham radio does, or. And I think after that the FBI got sort of a little bit interested. Of course, because they made a big mistake with there's Steve Kurtz. Does anyone know about this story? So they prosecuted this artist because he had like E. coli in his house. And they first tried to get him on bioterrorism, and then they tried to get him on wire fraud, and his collaborator actually pleaded guilty because wire fraud was actually a pretty bad thing to have leveled at you in the US. So, but it didn't look good for the FBI because they actually lost. So they prefer not to, pursue persecuting people that are generally doing okay things. Well, that's my take on it.
Making gigantic petri dishes.
Yeah. With environmental bacteria. I mean, that work was done in a room like this. But we, the artist, Anna, she has, we talked to the health protection officer at the local hospital, and he's kind of like, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do. So, the risks are very low generally. No, not even that. People are a bit paranoid about bacteria at the moment.
Is the guy's name, sorry? What's the artist's name?
Kurtz, Steve Kurtz. There has there's even a film with,
Steve Kurtz.
Steve.
Steve.
They even made a film about it, so with so it's part of this thing called Critical Art Ensemble, and they do a lot of, I guess, tactical biopolitics works. And they're not anti-GMO, which is really interesting. they're not pro-GMO, they're not anti. They're just trying to make it a bit more complicated.
What does everyone think of when you hear the word hack? I discussed this with Brian over lunch, and I had a very skewed idea of the word. Our company holds like regular monthly hack days, and I thought, well, shit, I can't get involved in this because I'm not a coder. I can't hack things, you know. So I had this very strict idea of what a hack is, which I think we've obviously already discussed that it's not just that. But I'm wondering if anyone had the same misconception. I love this concept of maker days.
There
as
was
a hack.
on someone posted something that like maker spaces are hacker spaces without ethics apparently. So hacker spaces are they have ethics. Maker spaces are in league with the I guess in the US like a lot of them are now being funded by DARPA.
By DARPA?
Yeah. So the DARPA have sort of said, hey, that's really good, all these grassroots.
Not Dartmouth University.
DARPA.
Because they're investing in making.
Yeah, so so the ethical hacking kind of like Chaos Computer Club kind of.
Yeah.
They have a very, very strict definition of what a hack is, and it's what a hacker is, and they invested a lot of time and effort into kind of making this name about someone who tries to understand how things work for the greater good and so on and so forth. I think the common definition, at least kind of in the U.S. circles that I'm in, is just nothing more than a clever solution to a problem.
Yeah.
You maybe using tools and techniques you have on hand, kind of stuff.
And also, refer to bio.
I see it also in a way a word that might define a user reuse of something with a completely different approach from what it was supposed to mean from the original design of it. And also kind of breaking some restrictions that have been put on the design stage.
There's a lot of these words through all the languages.
Yeah.
Like there's Jagat is the Indian word for it. That's where you sort of see, half a motorbike attached to half of something else.
Yeah.
Gambiado is the South American one. Is might be like you've got bad reception on your TV, so you just put a bit of wire wool on top of your antenna and everything works.
The UK version of the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, but they don't have Wi-Fi now. There's some steel wool, so whatever works.
Do you see the distinction between like science hacking and science as being quite like continuous rather than like absolute? Because I was just thinking like presumably it's quite a modern distinction as well, because historically science hacking was just science, right? Whereas now there's like professional science, and then so there's a distinction between like professional lab and what you do at home. But in the history of science, there wasn't a distinction between science and science hacking because people were just doing things. And I was thinking even in modern cases, I thought that was interesting. Like there's graphene, there's Nobel Prize for graphene where they use sellotape.
Yeah.
They got a Nobel Prize from research that was basically they just use sellotape on
So you could call that a clever hack. To the problem, right?
So that you can have examples of professional scientists who are
brings in that concept of clever reuse of something to solve a problem.
I think there's really interesting lab in material, like Alex Hazard, a bioengineering lab. He's got a hack where he built it's like a thing that uses tracks your eye movements, so you can control things using your way you're looking. They're really expensive, and he managed to build one for 30 quid. So there's
I guess that's. It's
hacking.
hack as in maybe hacking the system, or maybe just, you know, you can go into your average, you know, biotechnology or your technology supplier and, you know, basically there's no bottom of the range, it's only middle and high. It's like, you know, I just want to transfer some liquid from here to here. I don't want to spend £3,000 doing that.
Yeah.
Like getting, you know, an expensive peristaltic pump, because those pumps are designed to run forever. But a lot of the things we're doing are quite temporary, so, you know, hard drive or CD-ROM is good for, you know, shaking. And then, you know, there's all these like little components now that are like, now, you know, a few pounds to have like some sort of temperature sensor or accelerometer, or, you know.
Is there any ways to like encourage scientists to think more creatively about how they could use different things? Because I mean, there must be some, I guess, is there like health and safety issues, or I don't know, if you were in an academic lab and you said, hey guys, maybe we should just use like a washing out liquid bottle and this, people might look at you a bit like,
Yeah.
funny. I don't know, is there any way you could encourage scientists?
I guess, oh, maybe it's useful in trying to get people to explain their field to another field. So it's kind of like, you know, enzyme chemist, explain your, you know, show us something that's interesting in your field to an engineer. And engineers, can you build us something that we can use, or, you know.
Yeah, do you ever have people with like a scientist who come in and be like, look, I've got this problem, and because, you know, you come against that all the time, your kit is never precisely what you want.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of bodge in the lab that I work in. Like, like even like the best stuff was the thing that I used was bodged originally by my supervisor 7 years ago. No one has ever managed to bodge anything quite as good as that thing. And seriously, like they're little tiny plastic sticks, and they're like the mega bodge. And no one.
What are you used for?
They're used for dissection, and they're so perfectly made. No one's ever been able to make a better one. And like literally, if we lose one of them, and we spend days with those things.
We used to do this that you make from glass beads and stretch them. Yeah, we used to do before.
Yeah, and I feel like if there's this huge sort of like resource of people out there who
Really
enjoy working on this kind of stuff and would be interested in trying to like make better versions, then surely if we come to a hack and be like, look, there's this thing that I want to do, can you help?
Yeah.
And then if they can make a really good version, then be like, right, well, you can sell that, like, you know.
Well, a lot of the guys at the makerspaces will have, they'll have equipment that they kind of bought together, like CNC mills and engravers and things, which are kind of cool. If you're looking to, you know, to make something kind of precisely or whatever, they'll have the 3D printers and stuff. But they also just have a lot of experience working with different, you know, tools and techniques and doing stuff, so they can, and the whole reason they're there, what they're really excited about is just showing people how to make other stuff. So they just have classes in a lot of places, like Noisebridge, a big famous place in San Francisco where I'm from. They have classes all the time where they show people how to, you know, make various things. And so some of the things are just fun things, like there's a kit that a guy who shows you how to make, which, you know, he calls it the TV be gone. So like you can use it to turn off any TV in your presence, which I'm seriously considering getting for some airports.
Yeah.
But there's just, you know, like other various things that, you know, that he just likes to show people kind of how to take simple tools and make something that makes their life a little bit easier. That, you know, maybe there's a little hint of, you know, something transgressive about it, but that just his kind of storehouse of ability to work with different materials, know where to get things, you know, and know where to get the tools to work with them and how to use them. And, you know, he loves to teach people how to solve
Yeah. It does hackerspace tours. Just goes to all the hackerspaces in the world, teaching people how to solve it.
From Mitch and all.
He's also against the sort of, you know, professionalization of the hackerspaces, where, you know, big money comes into the hackerspace and actually it changes something because now there's money involved and people are like, oh, you know.
If you're ever in San Francisco, go on a Tuesday night to Northbridge because they have an open to anyone who wants to wander in discussion board meeting where they discuss the finances of the space, and it's kind of like, okay, so here we are, here's our and there's no official roles or anything. It's just this wonderful system of pure anarchy. It's like, okay, so anyone who wants to be part of the finance discussion committee show up at this place at this time, and then one person says, okay, well, I was in charge of the bank statement or whatever this month. Here it is. Take a look at it. Is there anything we want to talk about? It's really fun.
Actually, less things made and have less money and have to stretch their imagination. And they're not quite hacked, but in the labs that I've worked in, we have everyday household items taken into the labs and used for various things.
Yes.
These lab box work. We were using hair straighteners, we were using electric toothbrushes, we were using back in the day heat guns, and sometimes they were better than the official. Like the electric toothbrush was better than the things you buy from scientific industry for doing the job for incubators. It's just a better tool.
Yeah, well, it's very much in mind of like the 99% Occupy Wall Street guys, because they had a really clever hack for communicating to large crowds without a microphone. Right? One person would say it and then they'd all repeat it, kind of. I mean, it's making do with limited resources and getting your.
There's a cool thing. It's only marginally related, but I was just thinking on the terms of what you were describing as like hacking together the equipment for the lab and things like that. There's something called the Restart Project in London. I don't know if anyone's been to one, haven't yet. But they're completely dedicated towards like not letting our electrical equipment die and learning how to fix it. So it's people who are super interested in kind of the electronics of things and fixing them up. It's maybe not quite fully hacky. But Restart Project. Restart.
That sort of the fixer manifesto.
Fixer kind of thing. But it could be interesting to learn the fixing, meet the people who can fix, and then you can reimagine.
Yeah, if you know how to fix, it's the first thing.
You know how to fix, you know how to hack.
What's that all about?
Is that our time?
I don't know what is time.
2:15.
Yes.
Your program in the afternoon.